All right, listen up, Spuds. This is Zap Brannigan, master of time, space, and everything else in between. And, winner of this year's Modesty Award. You're listening to You Suck. What's the difference with Al and Tom? Your one stop for this sort of thing.
What's up, guys? How's it going? Welcome to USUK's What's the Difference podcast. I'm Alex Whiteley. Hello, Tom Bruno. No, he's not here today. He's not here, and it's just me and our guest. And I'm very, very happy to bring in this guy because already I've been in two of my favorite franchises on the TV. So I'm very happy to be welcoming Mr. Jon Levine. Thank you. Is it Levine? Is that right?
Levine.
Okay. Jon Levine. Thank you for joining us, man.
Hey, thanks. It's very nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
We were just chatting just backstage just before we went on. I was like, yeah, Tom isn't here. He's like, so I'm representing the US. And I was like, yeah, big responsibility. Huge. Where is it you hail from originally, Jon?
I was born in New Jersey. Lived there till I was about 7 years old, and then moved down to South Florida. So I really grew up in the Fort Lauderdale area of South Florida, which, if you're not familiar, is basically halfway between Miami and West Palm Beach. And now I've lived, kind of bounced around a little bit in my after college years, and finally settled here in Atlanta, Georgia, where I've been for the last almost 6 years now.
Oh, cool. I was just chatting to a guy from Kansas. Listeners, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see I'm a bit burnt. I'm a bit flushed at the moment because I've been out doing the Shrewsbury Folk Festival. And I always come country music over here is popular, but not as like religiously popular over is in America. Sure. But we have folk music over here, and there's sort of similarities. And there was a band called Truck Stop Honeymoon, and I interviewed them, and he was like one of the only American acts that they had there because of COVID. They couldn't bring anybody in from America. And he was like, yeah, I moved from Kansas after the hurricane Katrina, and I moved to Wales. And I was like, wow. A strange thing, American to be moved to Wales, and you go.
And it's kind of strange that Hurricane Katrina affected him in Kansas. Maybe he started in Louisiana, moved to Kansas, and then to Wales. Yeah.
That's what happened. And he was like, yeah, we moved to Wales. And it was just a nice, I'm going to get him on the show to explain properly, because I did like 5 minutes with him, like, the word for the biscuit, shove a microphone in his face. So you come from New Jersey, you moved around a bit, but what were you doing earlier in your life? Has it always been acting for you, or has there been little bits for you?
It's a sort of an interesting little story. So when I was in New Jersey, we were in northern New Jersey, which is literally right across the bridge from New York City. And my mother's from New Jersey, my father's from New York. So my whole family's really from the Northeast. And when I was about 5 years old, my parents had a friend who was an agent, a talent agent, and she was over for dinner. And I was kind of running around being my sort of normal 5-year-old self. And she said to my parents, like, wow, he's very expressive. He's very precocious. He's funny. Like, you might want to think about, getting him involved in some like TV commercials or something like that. So they actually took that advice. They got me some headshots, and I got an agent, and she was my agent, and I started going out and doing TV commercials as a 5, 6, 7-year-old kid. And like big national commercials, AT&T, Sara Lee, Hardee's Hamburgers, major brands here in the U.S. And I was a kid. I didn't really, I was like, oh, look, I'm on camera. Or, they would say, hey, do this and eat this little thing, and so I didn't really know, not necessarily what I was doing, but how much it really kind of influenced my perceptions and what I enjoyed doing. So. Like I said, we moved from the Northeast when I was about 7 years old, moved down to Florida. And back then there was no TV or film down there. So I just stopped doing it. It wasn't really a big deal. Just, but like I said, it influenced me. So I always kind of stuck around the performance space. Like I got into public speaking, and I got into student government, and I got into radio and TV, like TV news, and always things that involved cameras, performance, being on stage, being in front of people. which I really attribute to that earlier time in my life. And it wasn't until I turned about 40 years old, and I was kind of taking stock of my life, and I was not even in that space. I was working in marketing for a government contractor, and I was, I was just like, what if I could snap my fingers and be one thing, what would it be right now? And the answer to that question was a stand-up comedian. So I said, okay, let's make that happen. So I started doing stand-up comedy, and about a year into that, I said, you know what, we're doing stand-up comedy. Let's start doing some acting again. And that was about 6 years, almost 7 years ago, and here we are.
Amazing. And so what a thing to stand up comedy is like brutal, isn't it? It's like not only dog eat dog, but it's like you can straight up fuck up on stage and like you'll never forget it, right?
It's funny. And I don't know why I've been this way like my entire life, but I've never really had a terrible fear of failure. I've always kind of looked at it as part of the process. So I've never been afraid of like falling on my face flat or, doing anything like that. So, and being, like I said, being on stage was something that I'd kind of done my entire life. So I really fell into stand-up comedy very easily. And not to say that it's an easy thing to do. It's not. It's extraordinarily hard.
Of course.
But I think the combination of me having the background that I did, my whole family's very funny. My dad's very funny. My mom was very funny. My brother's funny. I was voted funniest of my high school class, my high school senior class. So I mean, like we're just kind of quick-witted, funny, and always been that way. So I think the combination of me having this performance background, being funny, not being afraid to fail, I just kind of jumped on stage and did it. And I believe truly in life, confidence is 80% of everything. If you believe you can do it, you can usually do it. So. And I did. I just kind of jumped on and started doing it, and had some really early success, and started with just going to open mics and writing jokes and stuff, and then started getting booked on shows and started getting paid to do it. And yeah.
Maybe I can speak to you after the show then, because we got Eddie Pence, who's a good friend of our show. Eddie Pence So Eddie Pence is the host of the Ramble podcast. He's a stand-up comic, same as Jerry Rocha. And Jerry Rocha has recently come down with cancer, and we're doing our charity event called Pod Aid to raise money for Lincoln Davis, who are a cancer fund. So I said to Eddie, I was like, "Yo, dude, do you fancy doing not fuck you cancer because that's been done, but kind of like because we're doing it for a well-respected charity, but kindly would you disappear?" Cancer type thing, so maybe you can get involved with that. I mean, we're going to do an hour of stand up, but I think wow, have you been doing that bit over lockdown? Because I know it's we've got a lot of comedian friends that have done a few of the Zoom room type things.
I'll be honest with you. So I did stand up comedy for about 5 years when I was in South Florida, really religiously, like grinding and doing all that kind of stuff. And then when I moved to Atlanta, I was still trying to do. So I moved to Atlanta specifically for acting. I mean, this is really now the hub in the Southeast and almost the United States of TV film production. So, and when I was in Florida, the acting was very secondary. And then when I moved here, it became very primary. And I tried to do both. Tried to kind of grind and do the stand-up comedy and do the acting. And it really was very difficult. I mean, stand-up comedy is very late nights. It's very going to bars at 2:00 in the morning, telling jokes to an empty room, which is all part of it. And it's great. And it's, but it was really starting to affect my next day when I had to go to acting class and do auditions and go to callbacks. And so I really had to make a choice. So I don't do stand-up comedy too much anymore. Every now and again, I still like to write jokes. So I'll hop out to an open mic and do some jokes, but it's not certainly something I used to do I do as religiously as I used to. So.
Very wise. I think it's very wise because, I mean, how does it make you feel when you're on set? When you're on set and you're doing what you love to do, how do you feel inside?
Amazing. I mean, it's an incredible experience that not only, I mean, I'm getting to do what I love. I get a question a lot of, I want to become an actor. Like, how do I become an actor? And the very first thing I say is you have to love this enough to want to do it for free for the rest of your life. Like that's the passion that you have to have for this, because if you're getting into this for the money, it's not that there's a million other things you can do that you'll have be much more successful if money is your goal. You really have to love to do this. So just being on a set and where you've been trusted enough by the people in charge to bring to life what they want brought to life is an amazing feeling inside. There's no doubt. It's actually funny. I was on set yesterday. I was shooting a TV commercial here in Atlanta, and it was a car commercial, and I was doing some stuff in the car, and they were moving the camera around and blah, 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 and the director was shouting to me to do all these different things. So we did it, and I they were like, okay, great, that was, thanks, John. And I get off, and the director, grabs me, and he's like, hey, that was awesome. And I said, thanks. I said, and I just, want to give you, what you need. And he's like, yeah, man. He's like, honestly, he's like, I could tell from the callback, you knew what you were doing. You loved to do it. Like, it was just in you. And I knew I wouldn't have any issues, with you being on set. And just him telling me that, obviously there's validation there. And you always like to hear that, because it's a kind of a business where you never know if what you're doing is right. You're doing these auditions and sending them off to casting directors, and you don't hear anything back unless you book the role. You don't hear anything back. So
it really pissed me off. It honestly, like, if I was like, yeah, that was the fucking one, man. That was the one. Absolutely nailed it. And then it doesn't get put onto the actual episode or something. They completely can it, or you don't hear anything back. That would drive me crazy.
You have to, and that's one of the things you have to be okay with. You have to be, and that goes sort of back to the failing part. It's, you have to be okay with the rejection of it, because this business is 98% rejection. The busiest year I ever worked was, I worked 10 full days, like, for the entire year. Okay.
Wow.
On multiple projects. But that year, I think I auditioned for 130 different projects, and I booked 4 of them. So, I mean, I don't know the exact math there, but I lost 126 of the 130 that I went out for. And that's just what it is. I mean, that's okay. I was thankful to be going out for 130 different projects. And that's what you kind of have to focus on, is the opportunities that you get.
We do speak to a lot of actors. I mean, the last episode we did, we spoke to Sean Kanan. He got his big role in Karate Kid Part 3, and he's just done 2 movies with Bruce. But anyway, I'm not here to we spoke to another guy, but like, we hear these stories all the time, and like, obviously Sean has been part of like TV soaps and TV shows and these kind of things, and he was kind of like, and we spoke to Mo as well. He played a part in Ted Lasso, and he's saying, like, he could have Mo could have bounced around in Canada and done TV soaps all his life, or he could have gone for the jugular, gone for like, let's go for that big role, and that's what they've decided to go and do. Whether it's later on in life, earlier on in life, do you feel like that's what you've got to do? You can't get too comfortable.
No, listen, you always have to try and level yourself up. I mean, there's no doubt about that, and there's decisions that you have to make in your career, kind of personally, about what you're willing to do, because you can kind of fall into these levels where, in the eyes of casting directors, where it's like, okay, John we're only going to give John these roles where it's, what's called a 5 and under, which is basically like 5 lines or less, these kind of little smaller roles. And there's competing strategies or competing ideas of how to kind of break out of that. But one of them is, you just stop accepting those. You stop saying, okay, you say to your agent, I only want to now audition for guest star roles and above, or, whatever that may be. I don't know if I'm at the stage in my career to make that leap yet. Now, I can certainly see the natural progression of the roles that I get asked to audition for from when I started to now. So I've started to get asked to audition for guest star roles, for recurring roles on series, for lead roles in pilots, things like that. So
nice.
Thank you. So just from a standpoint of, working hard at it and showing that I'm, each audition gets better and better and better and better as I try to just hone my craft. That's seen by casting directors. That's seen by the people who watch these things. That, we think John's ready to take the next step, and they'll test you a little bit. You'll get stuff that they know they're never going to book you for. Like, I've seen roles that I've auditioned for that were booked by major stars, and I'm like, hey, I read for that role. I was never going to get it. They were never even going to consider me for it, but they wanted to see what I could do with it. And that's all they wanted to do. They just want to say, hey, if we were to give John this role, what could he do with it? So they let me audition for it just to see. So
our auditions like recorded. So can you use like a recorded audition as part of your your back catalog, part of your thing that.
No, not really. It's really the only thing you put, like you're talking about your talent reel, like your resume reel.
Yeah. So this is what I did for this. I didn't get the part because Sly Stallone was in the room next door. Do you know what I mean? Like it must happen.
Yeah. Listen, it certainly does. But no, really the only things that you put on your reel are things that that have been produced and shown. Yeah, because a lot of people forget. And this comes into play with a lot of people who get headshots, especially people who are just starting out. They're always like, "Oh, what's the first step to becoming an actor?" I'm like, "The first step is getting professional headshots." And they're like, "Oh, my cousin has a great camera. He takes pictures with." I said, "That's fantastic. I'm sure he takes nice pictures." But the people that are looking at this are professionals, and they see this all day long, and they can tell the difference between something that's taken by your cousin with a really nice camera and a professional headshot photographer. And that's going to be the make or break moment. And that's the same thing with what you're saying is like the people that are looking at this know a real production versus something that you just auditioned for that was shot in your house. So they would look at that and be like, why are they showing me an audition? You know what I mean? I want to see something that they actually booked that was, and the other part of it is doing something in your home, like I'm in my home studio right now, doing something in your home studio with a friend of yours reading lines is a heck of a lot different than being on stage, on set. And doing it in front of 75 people with the clock ticking and having to work up against other actors, and so there's a whole nother level to that.
It's really funny because we speak to, like I said, we like movies, right? So we speak to TV producers, we speak to actors, we speak to all. But sometimes I'll come in and I'll have like fake tattoos drawn all over my face and I'll have a look on my arms because I work at a prison. I work at a closed prison here in Shrewsbury, and I'm one of the actors. And I always go, "Oh yeah. I'm really good at this." And it sounds like I'm comparing my life to the life of someone that's actually been on TV and been in the movies. It's not the case, but there are certain things, certain traits, and certain skills that you can pick up from one another. And one of them is that I always bring up is when you're auditioning for a role or you nail a part and you have an almost out of body experience and you're watching yourself do it because you've disappeared into the role. Has that ever happened to you?
Yes, and the thing that actually kicked that into understanding for me. I was in an acting class, and so the sort of the definition of acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. That's what acting is. It's acting is being and being is believing type thing, and I've always heard that, and I kind of understood what it meant, but then I was in an acting class, and I don't remember how we even got on this subject, but the acting teacher was like, "You ever have a fake argument with somebody in the shower?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, yeah, all the time." And you're like, "Yeah, you're literally having that conversation."
What the fuck, Donnie?
That's exactly correct, and everybody's done it, and that's what true acting is. True acting is being in that space where you're not in the shower. You're face to face with that person. You're in that environment in your imagination, and you're living that moment, wherever you are. It doesn't matter that you're on set in front of a whole, you're not really in space, in a space station, trapped. You're where you are in your imagination is in that spot, and you just disappear into it. And that's really what brings about, good acting, I would say, is because it's believable. And that's what good acting is. It's being truly believable. Doesn't matter how big or how small it is, or it's if that character is grounded in truth for that moment. And that's the space I tried to get myself into when I'm working, whether that be auditioning or shooting.
I'll never forget that audition. I'll never, ever, ever forget it because, it was for a psychopathic butcher. The wife had thrown out the meat, and I was concerned it was still good, and she threw out anyway. And I was going absolutely nuts. I was like, "Why the fuck did she do that for?" I was going absolutely nuts. And by the time I finished, they were sat back in their seats like, "Yeah, that was great." But you can see the difference in like a seasoned actor and someone that does. You only have to watch NFL and the kind of the trailers they put in the middle of a match or something. When you get one of the NFL stars, be like, "Hey, have you ever drank Gatorade?"
Yeah.
You can see the difference.
Well, it comes from the difference. There is. and we can get a whole conversation about good acting versus bad acting, but when you as an actor, if you are showing what you're feeling inside to the audience, that's bad acting. Like in real life, the majority of people tried to hide their feelings, not show them outwardly. And it's not interesting to anyone when you're just being spoon-fed something where it's like, okay, I get it. Like, yeah, you're sad. You want to invest yourself as an audience and make that connection. And are they sad? Why are they sad? What's going on inside of their heads? And I think that's really the case. So when you say like you get an athlete in a commercial and stuff, it's like, act like you like the product. I love this product. And it's like, yeah, no, that's just terrible. It's like, we know that you don't like that product, because nobody acts that way. Nobody, you wouldn't. So it's a really interesting, dichotomy, I guess.
It's become like a cliche thing, isn't it? Just act as though you really don't want to be here because people are like, hey guys, would you like to buy a Ford Taurus? It's great.
Yeah, well, I mean, people think that they have to show what they're feeling to come across when it's actually, you ever walk into a room and with somebody that and the first thing they say is everything okay? Like, you didn't say anything, you didn't do anything, you just walked in with a look on your face, and they knew, and they could tell inside that there was something going on. That's what real acting is. It's like you didn't come in going, I'm mad, but you just came in with an expression. And that led them to make a connection and to wonder and to, and that's, as an actor, that's what you have to kind of, you have to, you don't want to make the expression. You want to believe that you are upset, and then your body kind of takes over and does what it would naturally do if you were upset.
Do you have any emotions that you struggle with? Because I could do anger all day. I can do that. I can get in someone's grill. But what are the emotions that you kind of struggle with that you have to work extra hard on?
I'm really working on my getting very emotional on camera, really opening up emotionally. So that's somewhat of a difficult. I'm getting better at it, but it's still a struggle for me. And really, one of the things is like, I don't know about you personally, but I'm a crier. Like, if I watch a sad movie or if I'm watching a TV show or something, like I get emotional. And
I cried at the Star Wars trailer. I'm not going to lie. I saw Dark Ark, and I was like, oh my God.
Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan was on TV the other night. And when Spock dies at the end, I was crying hysterically, even though I've seen that movie a million times. You know what I mean? Like, and this was 2 nights ago. But when it comes to being on camera and all of a sudden having to elicit those emotions, I struggle with it. And really where that comes from is being relaxed and being comfortable and because if you start to think about it too much and you think, oh, I have to get there, or I have to do this, or I'm waiting for this to happen so that I could, then you start to get into your own head and it's never going to happen. So what you have to work on is being sort of at peace, at calm, and let the emotion, your emotions are there. They'll if they're allowed to come out, they'll come out. It's really on you to not block them and to just let them, let you express yourself, basically. So that's something I'm certainly working on. They always say that the one emotion that an actor can never truly believe, the one that you can never do truthfully, is surprise, because. Well, right, but you have to put that on, because if you know something's coming, then you're truly not surprised. It's like surprise is the act of not knowing what's going to happen, and so there are little things you work on like that, of how to
Which is why that scene in Alien where the chest burster coming out was completely improvised, right? They didn't know what was going to happen, right? And then with Leonardo DiCaprio with the blood on his hand as well. Oh, yeah.
There's that, and Alan Rickman in Die Hard, when they dropped him from the building. You ever heard that story? They had him like he was going to drop like a 10-foot, and then they were going to drop him in this airbag, or 30-foot, whatever it was, and they had him on the thing, and he's like, I think it was who directed Brian? Was it Brian De Palma? It doesn't matter. And he was like, we're gonna drop you on 3, and then he turned to the stunt guy. He goes, drop him on 1. So he was hanging on there like, okay, you ready? 1, and then he dropped him, and Rickman's face is like, and it was true surprise, because he thought he was going on 3, and they went on 1, and that look on his face, which is pure shock. I mean, it's a beautiful look that they got on camera, and it was just
slow motion as well, ultra slow motion.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It's an absolute peach. And I guess like it's all down to the director as well. Like if a director's kind of like, right, be sad, but be sad like it's a Sunday. You've got wet clothes. You just want to go in to get a cup of tea. There's no milk. Your team's lost at football, and then you only portray like 4 of those things in his mind, and he's kind of like, no, let's do it again. And like you said, you got to work hard on this shit, right? So you kind of like, I just got there, man. I got to do it again. What? It mustn't be easy.
Yeah, I mean, and you gotta. It's not only do you have to put yourself there, but you have to also remember that it's also not. There's also a level of unbelief. So my acting coach always would say, you always want one foot out of the pool. If you're playing a homicidal maniac, you want to do that 90%, but you're not a homicidal maniac. You got to kind of remember what's reality and what's not, and to not go all the way, but go most of the way. So. And there's Lee Strasberg, who's a very famous acting teacher, always taught about like using experiences from your own life to reflect in your acting. So using the death of your own father to reflect the death of your father on screen and getting emotional about that. And a lot of other acting teachers would think that that's actually very dangerous. Like you shouldn't do that because it's emotionally damaging to yourself. So there's competing theories about what you should use. Some say substitution, where it's like, okay, you might use the death of your father, but you're putting it on to another character. So you're not actually thinking about your father, but you're thinking about the emotions that you had, in that scenario, things like that. So there's a million different ways.
Please don't sue us.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at my bookshelf now, and there's all these different acting books on there from all these very famous acting teachers. And I've learned a little bit from every single one of them, and things that have helped me throughout my career. And a lot of it's overlapping, but, each one has kind of a little bit of a different take on this is how you should approach things, or this is how you should do things, or if you're trying to achieve these goals, this is what you should, this is how you should approach it. So.
Yeah, I mean, they do say, obviously, we were talking about that just. And in fact, the Truck Stop Honeymoon, the band that I mentioned from Kansas earlier, I spoke to Mike West, who's the singer, and we were talking about how different you can be outside of what you do and what you love, right? So I was saying, like, if I'm away from this microphone and I'm walking around a crowd, I can be kind of nervous, a little bit anxious. I'm not going to be I'm socially awkward, genuinely, in real life. Unless I'm behind a microphone, then I'm like, hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Shoes and Biscuit. Welcome to USUK. And he's the same. He was quite a timid guy. He was quite a nice, very well-spoken guy, obviously from Kansas. We had the interview. And he got on stage, and he was a fucking demon, man. He was playing the crowd like crazy. Are you the same? Are you two different people? Are you acting Jon Levine and outside of acting Jon Levine?
I'm actually yes, but the reverse of what you just described, and that actually comes from the roles that I normally get cast, or that I've been cast as. So I get cast a lot as like sort of the government employee, the office drone guy, the really kind of dry, by the book. The robot, basically. And I'm quite the opposite in real life. I'm very gregarious, and I'm very witty and outspoken, and talk to strangers on the street, and like all that. I have no issue with that at all. So when people do meet me in real life, that they've known things that they're like, wow, they're like, you're not like your characters at all. And I'm like, I know. I said, it's just weird that that's what I get cast for, even though I'm the opposite in real life. So
it's because I'm a genius, darling.
Yeah. I would say it's because I'm such a good actor. I can really play, tone down my personality. But yeah, and listen, I'm certainly not complaining about the roles that I get cast in. I'll get in where you fit in, and I'll take those roles, every day, for the rest of my life. But it is quite funny that I do get a lot of those roles sent to me, and I audition for a lot of those roles, even though I'm more in like the funny best friend than I am the boring office guy.
Yeah, and sometimes it just takes that one role, doesn't it? That one role, yeah. And you've been in two. I'm not going to say you're lucky, because like you're saying, you do like 100 auditions, ridiculous amounts of auditions. So you worked hard for it. So you agree. But obviously there's Kobra Kai that you were in, and you were the insurance guy. No, the health and safety guy.
The health inspector. Yep.
Yeah. Did you realize going into that show the kind of effect that show was going to have? I mean, bearing in mind it was YouTube's launch of doing TV, right?
Yep. So it was YouTube. It was back then it was called YouTube Red, and then it became YouTube
Mm-hmm.
Premium. And this was one of their first like scripted TV shows that they were doing. And this was season 1. I was in episode number 2. So it was. I loved the concept of the show. I loved what I had read about the show and what they were doing with it. No idea it was going to become like this worldwide phenomenon. I mean, no idea. I mean, after I watched the first season, yeah, crazy. And it was really, and it's funny too because I think today I was on Facebook and it was like, pulls up like, a year ago, 2 years ago. And I think last year, today was the day it came out on Netflix. Season 1 and 2 debuted.
Oh, like the anniversary. What?
Yeah. So I think because all these things were coming up of like, oh, last year, this was happening. And that's what really blew it up. I mean, it had a really strong following when it was on YouTube, but it was more of like a cult, not a ton of people had seen it, but the people that had loved it and talked about it and, had online fan things and, get-togethers. And but then when it hit YouTube and season 1 and 2 dropped on YouTube, it just exploded. I mean, just absolutely exploded. And they have Cobra Kai has such a great fan base. I mean, everybody I've met in that fan base is just amazing. And they're so dedicated to the show and they know everything about it. And I think it's so super awesome that they are such and it's funny because there's, young kids, I grew up on the Karate Kid. Like I saw the Karate Kid in the theater in 1984. And I remember it. I remember seeing Karate Kid 2 and 3 and all that kind of stuff. And then
we've all done the crane kick. We've all done that shit.
Yeah, 100%. You know what I mean? I think my brother did it to me when we got home and like knocked a tooth out of my, or like cut my gum or something like that. My mother was so mad. But and then to be a part of it later in life, I mean, it's like crazy to even think about that. I could be, involved in something like this, and then to do it, and then it to have the success that it
bizarre.
has.
It really is bizarre because they've done spin-offs on movies. They've done that shit to death. They did it with The Crow. They did it with Blade. They did it with so many different things from our past, and did nothing.
You know what I think one of the things that they did. I mean, you said the word spin-off, and I think that's a bit of a mischaracterization because I think it's more a continuation of the story.
It is, yeah. That's my bad.
It's not. No. It's. I mean, I think it's. And I think that's what people were interested in. They're interested in, well, what happened to these people after? You know what I mean? Like we knew them 30 years ago. What happened to them today? Like, where are they today? And I think they did such a great job. And also the role reversal. I mean, in that first season,
I remember.
Up to that point, it was like Johnny's the bad guy and Daniel's the good guy. And then all of a sudden, halfway through that first season, you're like, well, wait a minute. That's not the case. Fucking Daniel's a dick.
He stole the word right out of my mouth. Daniel LaRusso is a bit of a dick. Yeah.
And it's. I think that was what was so gripping about it. And then I think they quickly pivoted from like the whole nostalgia aspect of it, and to bring in a whole nother generation. With Sholo and everybody else, that's
Sholo,
on
man.
The show.
Woo! He's going places, man.
He really is. He just booked the Marvel, the Blue Beetle. So I mean, I think that's amazing. So I mean, I think they did such a great job. That whole team did such a great job. With the story, and they just got renewed for season 5 is coming. They just announced, which is awesome, and season 4 is debuting. I think in a couple days, or I don't even remember when it is.
They'd be stupid to get off that money train. They'd be so stupid to be this is the last season. Yeah. That's good. Well, they do.
No, I think
stuff like that all the time.
They do. But I think John Hurwitz said. I think he was. I know him obviously from when I shot, but I follow him on Twitter and Instagram and stuff. And I think he might have said something like, "We want to do 12 seasons," or something along those lines. And listen, as long as you're making good stuff and the story's still good, and keep it going. Why stop? You run the risk, obviously, of like jumping the shark. That's you don't want to. You want to go out on top a little bit, but they're nowhere near anything like that. I think they're doing a great job and putting together great stuff.
Amazing. And also, for people that may not have watched it yet, or which if you haven't watched it, what are you doing? Get off it. Stop listening to this. I'll give you a license to stop listening to this and go watch it. But you are now part of the MCU, right?
I am. I appeared in Loki, episodes 1 and 4 of the Disney Plus show with
in
Mr.
a
Tom
great
Hiddleston.
scene, great scenes as well. Great scenes. Like, you're the office clerk that prints off everything that Loki said, right?
Yeah.
And he's like,
Yep.
gives you some sass, and then it prints off another sheet, and you slap it on top. I love that so much.
Yeah, it was really a great. I mean, working with Tom was amazing. I mean, he is an incredibly talented guy and funny and warm and really, he's the exact guy you would think he would be and more. Just judging by his on-screen persona, But yeah, that scene was great. When I read that scene, I was laughing hysterically, even when I auditioned for it. I'm like, and it's funny when I auditioned for it because it's Marvel. They don't tell you anything. They change all the names of the characters in the script, and it's listed as an untitled Marvel project that you're auditioning for, so you have no idea.
Locked in a safe inside a safe inside a safe.
That's right. And you're signing an NDA, and you have to send them a picture of you signing the NDA, and then it's no, I'm just kidding. But it's like it's that severe of a don't tell anybody. But you don't even know. And I always tell people, it's like they're like, oh, we don't want you to reveal any secrets. I'm like, I don't know any secrets. They don't tell you anything. Even when you're on set, they give you 3 pages of what you're supposed to do, and that's it. They don't give you the whole thing. So, but it's when I read that scene, I was like, this is going to be funny. Like whatever it is, this is hilarious. And then getting on set and doing it with Tom and we shot probably about 3.5 to 4 minutes of that scene and got chopped down to 1 minute and 10 seconds or whatever it was. But there was so much more to that scene that was even funnier. And it was just, we just started ad-libbing, and he started ad-libbing, so I started ad-libbing, and the director was loving it when you started doing all this kind of crazy stuff, and it was hilarious. And it was, I'm hoping they release like a extended cut or like a
I hope so too.
type thing.
We all do.
Where I would love to see that. I would just love to see how the rest of that turned out, because we were all laughing. It was very funny.
What they're doing over at Disney Plus is such an interesting thing, because when we got to sort of Endgame, I've been quoted as saying, like, I think they've done this a bit too much now. We're getting that the kind of superhero sort of fatigue now. I think that's the word that was being used. But then they started the MCU TV series with WandaVision and Falcon and Loki, and I was just like, give me more. I couldn't believe what they did. The writing is just top tier, absolute top tier. I bet all your friends, your friends that are geeks, nerds like me, were like, get me Tom Holland's autograph, get me Chris Hemsworth autograph, steal me Captain America's shield. Did you get a bit of
that? 100%. It's funny, when I booked Loki and they finally told me kind of what it was, I was talking to my best friend and his wife, and I'm sitting in their house, and I said, yes. I said, they asked me, like, you have anything coming up? I said, yes. I actually just booked a Marvel show. And his wife says, are you working with my boyfriend? And I'm like, who's your boyfriend? She's like, Chris. I'm like, Evans. She's like, no. I'm like Hemsworth. She's like, yes. I said, close. And she's like, just so you understand, now I've known this woman for 25 years. She goes, just so you understand, if you're working with Chris Hemsworth and you don't get me on set, you are dead to me. And she was like, dead serious. I said, well, how do you really feel about that? Like, she's like, I will never speak to you again, ever. She's like, you need to get me on that set. I'm like, I said, I'll let you know. I'll let you know what I can do. But yeah, no, my friends are totally into it. And especially, I'm 48 years old. So all of my colleagues, all my contemporaries have kids, and their kids now are sort of, middle school and high school. So the fact that Uncle John is in the MCU, it's like, blowing their minds. In the fact that my nephew, who's 16 years old, sent me a text the other day in the middle of a school day of a picture, and it was my face on a computer screen. He's like, my friend is on the Marvel wiki right now and found you under the Loki thing, and I told him I know you, and everything. I was like, okay. I'm like, shouldn't you be at school, like, doing stuff? Like, I'm not a parent, but am I supposed to be responding to you? And he was like, no, it's cool, it's fine. I said, okay. I don't want Uncle John to get in trouble.
That's so beautiful. That really is. And I bet the time related question. So you're part of the TVA. You should know how time travel works, dude. It was a roll. I did 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's the truth. People and they ask me all these. Well, okay. Well, do you remember in the early '90s with Marvel and the Loki comics and this and that? And I'm like, yeah, no. I'm like, I used to read comics when I was younger. I said, but I they kind of tagged me as a Marvel expert. Even Kobra Kai, like, asked me all these questions, Karate Kid and dojos and all this. And I'm like, I enjoy it. I said, it's just something I do, but I'm certainly so thankful to be a part of it and to be a part of the universe, for both shows and be a part of the fan base. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I'm well done. You deserve it, man. You deserve. You work hard. I don't believe. I mean, so it was. We've spoken to so many actors, both successful and that are still trying to make it. We've spoken to a varied amount of actors, and regardless of whether you're making it or whether you're not, I believe the work that you guys put into it is just you need that reward. So I'm really happy.
Thank you.
Genuine.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I've certainly been fortunate. I mean, it's. There's timing involved. There's, just being, I don't necessarily believe in luck, like blind luck. I believe luck is timing plus preparedness. When you're ready for an opportunity and it arrives, it works. But there's a lot of that. I mean, there's certainly a lot of other actors that I know that work just as hard as I do and just haven't had the same opportunities that I have. So I'm very thankful for the ones that I get and the ones that I've been able to turn into projects and things like that. So it's certainly, it's not lost on how fortunate I've been in this business in such a short time that I've been doing it.
Just keep it up. I mean, have you had many more roles that you're working towards that you can tell us about?
I mean, I've been auditioning for some stuff. I had a callback for something the other day. So it's sort of the normal grind. Like I said, I shot a TV commercial yesterday. So just working, trying to get things going. It's like I said, it's one of those things where you're just constantly doing it and hoping something comes out of it. And, you just working on your craft and trying to get better every day and trying to make it happen.
I always wonder when you've signed an NDA and you've been on set. I mean, my friend Brian Plado, he played the photo double for Death on Bill and Ted 3. And there's so many times when he couldn't say anything. He couldn't do anything because he had to sign this NDA. But then I think one of the stars actually showed a picture of him falling asleep, and it was literally just Death asleep on this chair. It was amazing. And I do wonder, you've been on set, you've done this amazing thing, whatever it is you're doing, and you can't share about it on social media. You can't talk to anyone about it. It must be horrible.
It's not easy, especially when you do something big. And it's actually funny that you mentioned about somebody sharing a picture of him on set, because so I appeared in the trailer for Loki, the second trailer that came out. They showed the scene, the scene that I was in. I had no idea I was going to be in the trailer. Like, they don't talk to me about that. They don't tell me anything like that. And I had obviously knew that I had shot this. I mean, I shot it last October, November. So the trailer came out in April maybe or something. So I'd been sitting on this information. Well, I'd sitting on it since I booked it, which was earlier in the year in February, but the pandemic kind of paused everything. But and I was going to play golf in the morning. It was like 8:30 in the morning. And I get into my car and I put my phone up in my car and the screen lights up. And there's a Facebook alert. And it's like, Will Watkins, who's a buddy of mine from Florida that now lives in New York City, who we're Facebook friends. We talk on the phone every day. Will Watkins tagged you in a photo on Facebook. So I'm like, what's Will? Why is he tagging me on? So I clicked on it, and it's me sitting behind that desk, and it's like, oh my God, Jon Levine's part of the MCU. And I didn't know. I had no idea the trailer even came out. Well, and my first thought was, oh my God, like it leaked. Like it's something, something happened where it got.
What did I do?
Right, exactly. I'm like, oh my God. So I sent him, I'm like, where did you get this? He's like, dude, the trailer just came out. He's like, you're front and center in this trailer. He's like, when did you do this? I'm like, last year. I couldn't tell anybody. But it was at that point that I was like, well, I guess the cat's out of the bag, here I am. So it was that exact same thing. I'd been sitting on that, for, 6 months, just, waiting to tell people. And then all of a sudden, boom, the trailer comes out and here I am. So
we had something similar with Pod Aid, because the guys at Reach that are doing our thing, and this isn't me plugging my stuff in the middle of your thing, but it's a similar story. So the people that are making Pod Aid, Reach, which I hear, they have made our branding and our logos and stuff, and the name Pod Aid even, right? And they were like, yeah, we can't mention anything yet, not on social media, nothing like that. And not for weeks, I was like, oh, this 24-hour podcast challenge thing that we're doing, and it's horrible. Like, I couldn't even mention the own brand of my own thing that I was making. And I'm part of the Hasbro universe as well. You can't see that, but there's a Monopoly board there, the Shrewsbury edition of Monopoly, and my other podcast, the Shrewsbury Biscuit. is actually on that
that's
board.
cool.
We got our own square. It's on part of the Hasbro universe. Not
That's
quite
awesome.
there with John Cena or wherever it is that's in bloody G.I. Joe. But yeah, what roles would you like to play? Because you say you play the clerk type characters.
Yeah.
What would be the dream role for you?
Dream role. I mean, I'd like to do more comedy stuff, to be honest. Whether that be kind of sitcom or film or whatever that be. They don't do a lot of comedies here in Atlanta, which I've noticed, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they just do a lot of TV sitcom stuff in LA still. So they don't shoot a lot of that stuff here. So I'm not that exposed to it. I would love to do it. I think that kind of plays to my strengths. But I would also like to play, a little bit more dramatic of a role too. I'd like to kind of stretch that way and play something serious and, whatever that may be. It's so weird. I don't necessarily be like, oh, I'd love to play a killer. I'd love to, I do get, I get roles and they come by and I'm like, oh, this is really, it's interesting to me. This would be interesting to play. There's certain characters that I think I work better in than others. I don't think I really play a good cop. I don't kind of come off that way as a police officer, so I do get like these detective roles and stuff, and I do them, but I don't know. I watch them and I'm like, I don't know if that's that believable as a police officer. But now I'm starting to get a lot of dad roles. I'm starting to look a little bit more my age, so I'm starting to get in that vein, which is fine by me. It's like I said, I love to do it.
John, we'd like you to play a 14-year-old teenager. What?
Well, that's a stretch, but maybe 15, maybe 15.
Yeah, maybe 15, maybe 15.
Yeah. But I've certainly been one. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say we could do have a new sitcom. Actually, there's like huge gaps in the market for sitcoms at the moment. We don't really have anything at the moment, do we? Really?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything new that's coming out. I mean, it's summertime, so we'll not see some network stuff until fall. But I'm not sure what's on the slate.
We've got no Big Bang Theory anyour. We got there's not really like. We need a good sitcom and give John a part.
Yeah, I heard that Frasier's coming back. They're doing or trying to put that back together.
Oh gosh, Niles, I love that show.
Yeah.
That was so good.
Yeah, that's such a great show. And I had the opportunity to work with Kelsey Grammer last year, and he's awesome to work with.
And you got to play Dick McDonald, right? The Muck of McDonald's. How was that?
Yeah, that was fun. That was a really interesting role. That was a casting I saw. So there's a magazine. It used to be like a newspaper in New York City called Backstage, and that's where castings used to be released, before the age of the internet. Now it's mainly just a website. I don't even think they make the magazine anymore, the newspaper. But I was happened to be on the website, and they had this. It was really cryptic. It was like these roles for like these historical figures from anywhere from like the 1800s to the 1950s, and sort of in my white male 35 to 45 type range. So I was just like, okay. So I kind of sent it off, and then I get this, and they wanted me to audition for like a couple different roles. So both McDonald's brothers, they want me to audition for. I had no idea what project it was for, and both McDonald's brothers, and then I think like AJ Hines or something like that they wanted me to, from Heinz Ketchup. So I said, okay. So I did the auditions and I sent them off. And then all of a sudden they call me and they're like, hey, it's like A&E Networks. They're like, yeah, we want to book you on this. And we got to fly you back and forth to New York, over the course of a month. And, we're doing all this big period piece and I'm like, oh, okay. And then, and that's really kind of how it happened. It was like such a really random type happenstance that I just happened to see this casting and happened to send in my stuff and I booked it, and it was a really great role. It was that show that they've now continued. They've got a second season of The Food That Built America, and they've got now The Machines That Built America, and they've got all these kind of different things, and it's a great series. I mean, it's really well produced, it's really well shot, well written, and it's so interesting. Like I thought the story was so interesting. I mean, I knew cursory and things about the history of McDonald's, but I obviously got to know a lot more of it when I did that role. So.
We did another show on this network called Yelling at Clouds with my good friend Eric Kluger, and I told him one night he's a very intelligent guy and I'm not, right? So he teaches me while he teaches the audience. So it's kind of like classes in session type thing. And I told him, I was like, oh yeah, one night I sat and watched The Founder, which is here. Boom. Michael Keaton, great film. And he was like, "Oh my god, we could do an episode about that." So we did, and we made an episode called Nothing Burger, which is out in a few weeks, guys. I keep to that, and it is a beautiful story because the McDonald's brothers definitely got fleeced over McDonald's.
It's interesting. Like, yeah, you watch The Founder, and that's how it kind of came off, and you look at the history of it, and I don't know. I'm not so much on the side of like that he took such advantage of them. I mean, they dictated the terms of the deal of what they wanted for the brand, and he had to scramble and come up with investors to put the money together because they wanted $2 million or I don't know, $1.7 million, like whatever it was that they that they wanted for which back then was a tremendous amount of money. And their kind of thing was they never thought that he could even come up with the money to do it. And then he did. And so they sold it. I mean, they were happy to sell it to him. And, everybody looks at what it is now and goes, oh, well, had they stayed and had they done it, they could have made all this more money. And I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I don't think they had the same vision that he did. So if he couldn't have come up with that money and they never sold it to him, would McDonald's be McDonald's? I'm not so sure about that.
It is one of those questions, yeah. And that's kind of what we covered in that episode. It was kind of like, because Eric is into graphic design and he loves the idea of the golden arches and the architecture and the imagery behind it. It is an interesting one. It is a very interesting one because he did. Yeah, you listeners will have to listen back to that episode because it really is interesting. It's not out yet, but find it when it's out. Words and stuff. So what do you do then? Because when it comes to auditions, right? We had Slade Monroe, a young actor who just done 12 Mighty Orphans with Luke Wilson. I was like, young actor coming through, you've got to nail these auditions, right? This is your first big role. You've got to go out there and do that. What is the night before an audition like for you? Do you practice, or you're like, I'll just nail it, it's fine?
No, I mean, it really depends on the role. It depends on the gravity of the scene. It depends. There's a lot of so I'll give you two examples. So I'm shooting an audition today after this podcast. I have to do an audition. So a friend of mine's coming over to do an audition, and it's a I can't tell you what it's for, but it's an extraordinarily well-known entity, let's just say, they're putting a show together. And it's something that once everybody will know what it is. It's not like something that's being introduced. So it's interesting, but it's a short audition, and it's it's probably a larger role in the scope of the show, but just the audition itself is fairly short. So I looked at it. I kind of examined the scene, said, okay, I kind of have a feel for what they're trying to do and how they want this character to be, or how I think they want this character to be. And I'll do it a couple of different ways and send them a couple of different takes, of different varying, emotions or whatever. And that's something that's like that. Now, last week or 10 days ago, I did an audition there's a new movie that's being produced by Whoopi Goldberg and that she's starring in, about Emmett Till, who was a teenager that was murdered here in the South in the 1950s. And it's a true story. And two white men were acquitted of his murder, even though there was overwhelming evidence that they had tortured him and murdered him. It's a horrible story. And it really was the what led up to the civil rights movement in this country was the murder of Emmett Till. So they're doing they're doing a movie about that story. So I was auditioning for one of the defense attorneys who were defending these men at this trial. That was 6 pages of dialogue. It was a courtroom scene. It was set in Mississippi in the South. So there was a lot more preparation that went into something like that, from this aspect of the time period, who this person was in real life, the accent that he was speaking in, because it was set in Mississippi in the 1950s. So I had to research that accent a little bit. What the tenor and tone of the scene was going to be, as far as me questioning Emmett Till's mother on the stand and how I wanted to come off or how I wanted to make her look. I mean, there's all these different aspects that, and then who is this person as this attorney who are you inside that you would defend these people against the murder of a trying to prove them innocent against the murder of a young child, but then also remembering the time and where it was like, well, they didn't look at him as just a young child. They looked at him as nothing, as not even a human being. And so it was almost like, being put on trial for, killing a dog, and things that are very emotional and very sad. And you kind of have to put that all into your body and then do it. And obviously get all the dialogue down and get all the lines memorized and things like that.
Very complicated. Very complicated.
Yeah, when you get into stuff like that, it gets really complex because it's human emotion, and there's a sort of a modicum, or not a modicum, but I guess a theory that everything that every human being has ever done on this planet, from the nicest things to the most horrible atrocities, is in every person. You look at these horrible atrocities that are committed by Nazis and genocidal maniacs, things like that, and those are just people, and either they think a certain way, but it's all inside of it. So everybody has that in them to be. If they were put in a similar circumstance, they might have risen to that exact same level, because they're not anything special. They're not anything different. They're just human beings that have been put into specific circumstances, and certain things have happened to them that have pushed them in these directions, and they've justified their being and justified their actions. And so as an actor, you have to sort of say, okay, I could be that person. I could be that person that feels it's okay to defend these men against, you know what I mean? And you gotta, even though I'm not, obviously, and I think it's horrible, and I think it's, something that's so atrocious that it makes me sick to think about. But as an actor, you have to say, okay, but I could be that person. And how would that person think, and how would that person act? So for something like that, for an audition like that, there's a lot more preparation that goes into something like that.
I see that though. I mean, I play a good bastard, but I'm an easygoing guy. But I can play I'll play a real good bastard. Is that me? I like to think actually that bastard is inside me, so I can be like, "Oi, get the fuck out of my way, knobhead!"
Well,
I don't really speak like that.
But I bet if you were put in the right scenario and pushed and the right buttons were pushed, you would act like that way.
Yeah,
because
probably.
It isn't right. and that's what it is. I mean, everybody, put in the right scenario, everyone would act, the way you're human, there's all these sort of basic actions that all human beings have. We all have fear, and we all have, a joy, and we all have, all that kind of stuff. And it just depends on, your upbringing and your childhood. And I mean, everything that you've done prior to this moment is the reason you're acting the way you are today. I mean, the reason you act the way you act today is because of every single thing that's happened to you from the second you were born until 3 seconds ago when I made that statement. And me too. And you don't have to think about how you act. That's just who you are. And it's natural for you because that's who you are as a human being. When you're playing a character, all you have are words on a page. So you have to kind of go back and think, okay, why would this person act this way? They're a piece of shit in this scene, but why are they a piece of shit? Why, no one just acts like a piece of shit to act like a piece of shit. They act like a piece of shit because when they were 7 years old, their father beat them senselessly for no reason. And that, or whatever whatever those things are. I'm not, but that's, as an actor, that's the job. I mean, that's what you have to dig into and understand, and to be truthful about it, to be grounded in the truth of, I'm acting this way because of who I am, not because I'm just trying to act that way. So
it really kind of explains the whole Heath Ledger thing a lot. You can understand why Heath Ledger got the way he did playing the Joker, because he kind of really went into that role a little bit to try and understand the role and play the role. It sent him in damn dark places, right?
Yeah, and it's like I said earlier about keeping 1 foot out of the pool. It's like, because you kind of still have to ground yourself in a little bit of reality, because you don't want to get too dark, because listen, everybody has the ability to kind of spiral out of control, and as an actor, you're going to some really dark places. I mean, especially when you're playing really horrible people, and you want to put yourself in that mindset, but you don't want to live too much in that mindset, I guess is the way to kind of frame it.
I guess that's why Ryan Reynolds is just hilarious, because he's just Wade Wilson in real life. Yeah.
He's a funny guy. I love Ryan Reynolds. I think he's brilliant.
I think it's amazing. I'm trying to get an interview with him because he's just bought the football club from the town I grew up in North Wales, in Wrexham. So he's bought that football club, and there's people like, yeah, I can get you an interview with him. I'm like, get me a fucking interview with Ryan Reynolds, please. Damn. John, I know we're just running out of time now. Thank you so much for joining us today and tell us a bit about. I'd love to invite you back on too in a year's time or whatever. See what you've been up to.
Yeah, listen, this was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me, and I'd love to come back. Absolutely.
I know you got an audition today. I wish you the best of luck. What we'll do is I'm going to end the show because Tom isn't here. We've got no later lounge afterwards, and I got to go back to the festival to get some more interviews and stuff. So what I'll do is I'll tell you about a few things that's coming up, John, and then we'll get out of here. On the 29th of September, we got Pod Aid, guys. I know I tell you every week, but at 9 a.m. on the 29th of September, we're going to go live, and we're not going to stop until 9 a.m. on the 30th of September. Wow. It's going to be a 24-hour live streamed on YouTube, and it's called Pod Aid. And we're doing this in order to raise money for a local cancer fund called Lingen Davis, and we have our main sponsors, thanks to Reach, who have done our marketing, our logos, our social media. They've done a great job. And we have our venue as displayed here by my son Alfie, thanks to Shrewsbury Town and Community's Reach Community Hub. The reason why we're doing this, John, is to try and encourage other content creators around the world to do something positive for their community. So what we're going to do this year is we're going to show you guys how it's done, what we do, and what kind of positive effects we've had. And then next year, we're going to challenge you guys to do even better with your own projects, whether it's a podcast, a game streaming, an OnlyFans. We don't care. If you're doing something to better yourself, better your community too. So that's what Pod Aid is all about. And you can find everything you need to find out about Pod Aid by going to our social media, which is Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can also go on the Pod Aid social media places. They've got Facebook as well. And you can go to our website, which is usuknetwork.com. And that's powered by our friends at Web Orchard. And we have two other shows as part of our network too. We have Wednesday Night Live, which is 9 p.m. UK time every Wednesday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And it's a bit like going down the pub with your mates. We meet up, we have a few drinks, and we chat and we catch up. And we have Yelling at Clouds, which I mentioned earlier, with the great and powerful and very clever Mr. Eric Fluger, where he will teach us the art. He likes to talk about art. He's our professor. He tells us about things like kinetic art. What is kinetic art? What moves us, and why does it move us the way it does? It's very, very good. Breath. John, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. I really do appreciate you coming on the show. Guys, this has been What's the Difference podcast. Thank you to my guest, and I've been Alex Whiteley. I'll catch you guys next week. Peace out.
Hi, this is Ickis from Our Real Monsters. And I would like very much to ask you, if you don't mind, to watch the USUK Network with Tom Bruno and Alex Whiteley. Oh, that's all. I have to go flush myself now.